The planet Varric 7 was a dead world. Once filled with life, now it was nothing but ruins, burned forests, and shattered cities. The war between the Tarkili Empire and the United Human Colonies had left the land broken, and the survivors, if there were any, were left to fend for themselves. Among the ruins, something stirred. A massive creature lay in the dust, its body covered in deep wounds. Metal plates were fused into its thick skin, flashing with damaged circuits. This was no ordinary beast. It was a Corvith war beast, a bioengineered hound of war, created and trained by the Tarkili. Its breathing was slow, weak. Its 3 red eyes flickered open, scanning its surroundings. The war was over. Its masters were gone. They had left it behind. Pain shot through its body, but it did not whimper. Corvith war beasts did not show weakness. They were made for war, unstoppable machines of destruction, trained to obey their Tarkili masters without question. Yet now, there was no one to give commands. The war beast tried to stand, but its left leg collapsed under its weight. The metal implants in its body sparked, failing. It was broken, dying, and no one was coming to save it. The humans arrive. Not far from the ruins, a small human scavenger team was moving carefully through the wreckage. "Keep your eyes open," said Captain Elias Carter, gripping his plasma rifle tightly. "We don't know what's still out here." Behind him, his team moved in silence. They were not soldiers. They were scavengers, survivors, searching for anything useful left behind after the battle. Elias wiped sweat from his forehead. The heat on Varric 7 was unbearable, and the air smelled of burned metal and smoke. His team had been searching for supplies for hours, but so far, they had found nothing worth taking. Then, Dr. Lena Vasquez, the team's cybernetics expert, froze. "Captain," she whispered, pointing toward a pile of rubble ahead. Elias followed her gaze and felt his stomach tighten. Lying in the dust, half covered in debris, was a Corvith war beast. His team tensed, gripping their weapons. These creatures were known for their brutality on the battlefield. Many human soldiers had fallen to their claws and metal jaws. But this one was different. It was injured, weak, dying. A choice to make. "What do we do?" asked Dmitri, a tough-looking man with a thick beard. "Leave it? We don't have the supplies to deal with that thing." Elias hesitated. Logic told him that Dmitri was right. A fully grown Corvith was incredibly dangerous. Even in its weakened state, if it woke up and saw humans, it might attack on instinct. But something in Elias's gut told him to stop. "They left it behind," Lena murmured, stepping closer. "Just abandoned it like a broken weapon." "Because that's all it is to them," Elias muttered. "A weapon." He looked at the beast again. It was covered in scars. Some were fresh from the battle, but others were older, marks of years of war. This thing had never known kindness. It had only ever followed orders, fought, and killed. Elias was not a soldier, but he had seen too much war, too much cruelty. He had seen humans treating their own wounded with care, risking their lives for their comrades. Could they really just walk away from a creature that had been left to die? Lena knelt beside the beast, checking its cybernetic implants. "The loyalty chip is still active," she said. "If it wakes up, it'll recognize us as enemies. It could kill us." Elias sighed. "Can you disable it?" Lena hesitated. "Maybe. It's risky." "Captain," Dmitri said again, voice tense. "This is crazy. That thing could rip us apart in seconds." Elias stared at the war beast. It wasn't just a machine. It wasn't just a weapon. It was alive. "We're not leaving it," Elias said finally. "We take it back." Dmitri cursed under his breath, but didn't argue. Saving the war beast. The team worked quickly, wrapping strong metal cables around the beast's limbs in case it woke up. Lena injected it with a mild sedative, enough to keep it asleep, but not enough to stop its body from healing. They loaded onto their hover sled and began the slow journey back to their outpost. As they moved, Ilias couldn't shake the feeling that he had just made a very dangerous decision. This was a war beast. It had been trained to hate humans. Could it ever change? Or had they just brought a monster into their home? Only time would tell. The journey back to the outpost was slow and tense. The hover sled hummed softly as it carried the injured Corvith war beast across the ruined battlefield. Captain Elias Carter walked beside it, gripping his plasma rifle tightly. Even though the beast was sedated, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were carrying something extremely dangerous. His team moved cautiously, keeping an eye on their surroundings. The war on Varric 7 had ended weeks ago, but scavengers, rogue Sarkili patrols, and dangerous creatures still roamed the land. They were not safe. Dmitri, the team's weapons expert, walked beside Elias, his expression grim. "Captain, I still think this is a bad idea." Elias sighed but didn't respond. He had already made his decision. Behind them, Dr. Lena Vasquez monitored the war beast's vitals on her portable scanner. "Its heart rate is stabilizing, but its cybernetics are in bad shape," she said. "Some of the implants are failing, and the loyalty chip is still active." Elias glanced at the massive creature. It was a machine of war, a deadly creation of the Harkili Empire. It had been abandoned like a broken tool, left to die on the battlefield. Now it was in human hands. Would it see them as saviors or enemies? The outpost. After 2 hours of careful travel, the team finally reached their hidden outpost, a reinforced underground bunker built into the ruins of an old Sarkili base. The doors hissed open, and they quickly moved inside, dragging the hover sled behind them. Inside, the lights flickered on, revealing a clean but cramped space. Metal crates lined the walls, filled with supplies and salvaged equipment. A small medical bay stood in the corner, along with a workshop filled with tools. It wasn't much, but it was home. As the doors sealed shut, Lena sighed in relief. "All right, let's get to work." They carefully lifted the war beast onto a metal examination table, strapping its limbs down with reinforced restraints. It was still unconscious, but no one wanted to take any chances. Elias crossed his arms. "How long until it wakes up?" Lena glanced at her scanner. "A few hours, maybe less." Dmitri scoffed. "Great, that gives us just enough time to decide whether this was the dumbest thing we've ever done." Reprogramming the beast. Lena pulled up a holographic display, showing the beast's cybernetic systems. The loyalty chip flashed red, still linked to its former Sarkili masters. "If this stays active," she explained, "the moment it wakes up, it will see us as enemies. It's programmed to obey Sarkili commands only." "So we disable it," Elias said. Lena hesitated. "It's not that simple. The loyalty chip isn't just a switch, it's wired into its brain. If I try to remove it completely, it could kill the beast or cause extreme pain. But," she took a deep breath, "I can try to override it." Dmitri raised an eyebrow. "You're saying we can make it think we're its new masters?" Lena nodded. "In theory, yes. But I don't want to control it like the Karkili did. If I do this right, I can free it. Let it think for itself." Elias stared at the war beast's massive frame. Its 3 red eyes were shut, but its breathing was slow and steady. Could a creature like this really change? "Do it," he said finally. Lena exhaled and got to work. The beast awakens. Hours later, the war beast stirred. Elias, Dmitri, and the rest of the team stood ready, weapons in hand. Even though Lena had overridden the loyalty chip, no one knew what would happen when it woke up. A deep, rumbling growl filled the room. The beast's red cybernetic eyes flickered open, scanning its surroundings. Its massive body tensed, testing the restraints. Its ears twitched, listening. Then suddenly, it stopped. It wasn't attacking. It wasn't thrashing. It was watching them. Lena took a cautious step forward. "Easy," she said softly. "You're safe." The beast's eyes locked onto her. For a moment, the room was filled with silence. Then, Ilias did something crazy. He took off his glove and slowly reached out. Dmitri muttered, "Captain, what the hell are you doing?" But Ilias didn't stop. His hand hovered just inches from the beast's massive head. If it wanted to, it could bite his arm off in a second. The war beast sniffed the air. Its glowing red eyes studied him. And then, it did something no one expected. It let out a low huff and nudged Elias's hand, a sign of trust. Dmitri's mouth fell open. "You've got to be kidding me." Elias smiled. "I think it understands." The war beast wasn't attacking. It wasn't seeing them as enemies. It was learning. The room was silent. Elias kept his hand still, feeling the warm breath of the war beast against his palm. The creature's glowing red eyes studied him, filled with something unreadable: curiosity, confusion, maybe even fear. No one spoke. Dmitri had his weapon half raised, his finger hovering over the trigger. The others stood frozen, waiting for the beast to attack. But it didn't. Instead, the war beast let out a low, rumbling huff and pressed its enormous metal-plated forehead against Elias's hand. Lena gasped softly. Dmitri whispered, "No way." Elias didn't move, afraid that one wrong motion might change the beast's mind. It was still strapped to the table, but it could easily break free if it wanted to. Yet, instead of aggression, it was showing something else: trust. A broken creature. Elias pulled his hand back slowly, careful not to startle the beast. It blinked at him, but didn't growl or struggle. That was a good sign. Lena took a cautious step forward, her scanner in hand. "I need to check its vitals," she murmured. Elias nodded, stepping aside. The war beast turned its gaze toward Lena, its ears flicking back in uncertainty. It didn't snarl, but its breathing became heavier. "Easy," Elias said in a calm voice. "She's just helping." The beast exhaled loudly, but didn't resist as Lena slowly placed the scanner against its metal-plated shoulder. The screen flickered to life, showing a mix of biological and cybernetic readings. "Its heart rate is stabilizing," Lena said, "but some of the implants are failing." She tapped the display, frowning. "Its pain receptors are still active. The Karkili designed these creatures to ignore pain, but that doesn't mean it doesn't feel it." Elias's jaw tightened. The Karkili didn't treat these beasts as living things. They were tools, machines built for war. If one was injured beyond use, it was left to die. "Can you fix it?" Elias asked. Lena hesitated. "Maybe. I can repair some of the cybernetics and ease the pain. But I need to know something first." She turned to Elias. "What are we going to do with it?" A difficult decision. The room fell quiet. Dmitri crossed his arms. "Captain, let's be real here. We saved this thing. Sure, but what next? We can't keep a war beast in our outpost." "He's right," said Marla, their logistics officer. "We don't even know if it's truly safe." Elias looked at the creature again. It was watching them, listening. It understood more than they thought. "It hasn't attacked us," Elias said firmly. "That means something." Dmitri scoffed. "Or maybe it's just waiting for the right moment." Lena shook her head. "No, I don't think so." She turned her screen toward them. "Look at this." Its stress levels dropped the moment it realized we weren't going to hurt it. If it wanted to kill us, it would have tried already. Elias exhaled. This wasn't just a creature of war. It had thoughts, feelings. "We're not turning it away," Elias said finally. "It stays." Dmitri grumbled under his breath, but didn't argue. Lena smiled slightly and reached out toward the war beast. "Then let's see if we can make it feel better." The first meal. Over the next few hours, the war beast remained calm. Lena worked on repairing its failing implants, carefully removing damaged circuits and replacing broken parts. Each time she touched its metal plates, the beast flinched slightly, but it didn't resist. Elias stayed close, watching. The beast was still cautious, but it was learning. Then, it did something surprising. When Lena finished her work, she reached for a bowl of food, a mix of protein-rich meat and vitamins. She placed it on the ground near the beast's head and stepped back. At first, it didn't move. Its glowing eyes locked onto the food, but it didn't eat. "Maybe it doesn't trust us yet," Marla said. But then, Elias crouched down beside the bowl. He picked up a small piece of meat and tossed it gently toward the war beast. The creature's ears twitched. It hesitated. Then, finally, it opened its powerful jaws and ate. Lena let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Dmitri whistled softly. "Well, that's a start." Elias watched as the war beast finished the entire bowl. It wasn't just surviving anymore. It was accepting them. A new name. As the night passed, the war beast rested peacefully for the first time in its life. Elias sat near its table, watching its slow, steady breathing. His team had gone to rest, but he stayed behind. He wasn't sure why. Maybe because, for the first time, he didn't see a weapon lying there. He saw a living being. He tapped his fingers against his knee, thinking. Then, almost without realizing it, he spoke. "Brutus." The beast's ear flicked. Elias smiled slightly. "Brutus," he repeated. "That's your name now." The war beast didn't react immediately, but then it rumbled softly, a deep, content sound, and Elias knew. The beast had accepted it. Brutus was home. The outpost was quiet. Elias sat at the metal table, sipping a cup of stale ration coffee, his mind deep in thought. Across the room, Brutus, the massive war beast, rested on the floor, his 3 red eyes half closed. It had been 2 days since the team rescued him, and already he was showing signs of trust. The beast still watched them cautiously, but it no longer growled when they approached. It accepted food, allowed Lena to check its wounds, and even rumbled softly when Elias spoke to it. It was progress. But peace never lasted long in a war zone. A sudden alarm blared through the outpost. Elias was on his feet in an instant. "Report." Dmitri's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, we've got a problem. A Xarkili patrol ship just entered our airspace." Elias cursed under his breath and sprinted toward the control room. Brutus lifted his head, his ears twitching. His cybernetic implants glowed faintly, and a deep, low growl rumbled in his chest. For the first time since they had found him, he looked afraid. "The enemy approaches." Elias reached the control room, where Dmitri and Marla were already monitoring the screens. A sleek, dark Xarkili scout ship hovered in the distance, its engines glowing blue against the dark sky. "They're scanning the area," Marla said. "They must have picked up some of our activity." Elias clenched his fists. "How many soldiers?" Dmitri zoomed in on the display. A Xarkili dropship was deploying troops. "Looks like a small patrol," he said. 5, maybe 6 Xarkili warriors. Standard gear, plasma rifles, and... He stopped. "Damn, they've got a war handler with them." Elias's stomach twisted. A war handler was a Xarkili officer trained to control war beasts through their cybernetic implants. If they still had access to Brutus's old command codes, they could override Lena's modifications and turn him against them. "We need to move," Elias said. "Now." Brutus's reaction. Back in the main chamber, Brutus was pacing. His massive claws scraped against the metal floor, his body tense. He could feel them coming. Lena stood near him, watching nervously. "Elias, I think he knows." Elias stepped forward, raising a hand. "Brutus," he said calmly, "listen to me." The war beast stopped pacing and looked at him. His ears were pinned back, his breathing heavy. The red glow in his cybernetic eyes flickered, as if his programming was fighting against his instincts. "They're coming," Elias continued. "The ones who abandoned you. The ones who left you to die." Brutus snarled, his muscles tensing. His cybernetic implants buzzed, like static in the air. "They will try to control you again," Lena added, stepping closer. "But you are not their slave anymore. You choose what happens now." The war beast's red eyes locked onto Elias. For a moment, the tension was unbearable. Then, Brutus exhaled loudly and lowered his head. He had made his choice. He would stand with the humans. The battle begins. The team took defensive positions. Elias, Dmitri, and Marla hid behind metal crates near the entrance, weapons ready. Lena remained inside with Brutus, who crouched low, his muscles coiled like a spring. The sound of Tarkili boots echoed in the tunnels. Elias raised his rifle. "Wait for my signal." A moment later, the doors slammed open with a hiss. A group of Tarkili soldiers stormed inside, their tall, armored bodies moving like shadows. Their dark red eyes scanned the room, searching for threats. The war handler stood in the center, holding a command tablet. "Humans," the war handler sneered in a guttural voice. "You have something that belongs to us." Elias aimed his rifle at the Tarkili's head. "Not anymore." The war handler smirked and tapped his tablet. Brutus roared in pain. The beast staggered, his cybernetic implants flashing violently. A high-pitched screech filled the air, and his body shook uncontrollably. Elias's heart pounded. The override command was working. The war handler grinned. "Your little pet still remembers who its true masters are." Brutus snarled, his red eyes flickering between control and freedom. He dug his claws into the ground, shaking his head violently. "Brutus," Elias shouted. "Fight it." Brutus's body trembled. His tail lashed, his fangs bared, and then he turned toward the war handler. The Tarkili's smug expression faltered. Brutus let out a thunderous roar and lunged. The war handler barely had time to react before Brutus's massive claws slashed through the command tablet, shattering it. Sparks flew as the device broke apart, the override signal cut off. The beast's eyes glowed fiercely, not with obedience, but with fury. He was free. Victory. The Tarkili soldiers panicked. Brutus charged, his massive form moving like a storm of claws and steel. He crashed into the nearest Tarkili warrior, sending him flying across the room. Elias and his team opened fire, plasma rounds striking armor and flesh. Dmitri took down one soldier with a precise headshot, while Marla disabled another's weapon. The war handler tried to run, but Brutus was faster. With a snarl, the beast pounced, pinning the Tarkili to the ground. His jaws opened wide, fangs inches from the handler's throat. The Tarkili trembled. Brutus growled, but did not kill him. Instead, he stepped back, his message clear. He was no longer their weapon. The few surviving Tarkili soldiers stumbled backward, grabbing their wounded. Elias pointed toward the exit. "Leave. Now." The war handler glared at them, but didn't argue. His forces retreated, dragging their dead and injured behind them. The doors slammed shut. Silence. Then, a deep, low huff from Brutus. Elias looked at him and smiled. "You did good, big guy." Brutus let out a soft rumble and nudged Elias's shoulder. The war beast had chosen his side. He was with the humans now. The battle was over. Elias stood near the metal doors, his rifle lowered but still in his grip. His heart pounded in his chest. The Tarkili were gone. For now. Behind him, Brutus exhaled loudly, his large frame shuddering. His metal-plated body bore fresh scorch marks from the battle, but he stood tall. The beast's glowing red eyes were no longer filled with fear or confusion. He had made his choice. Lena knelt beside him, scanning his wounds. "His implants were almost overridden," she said. "If that war handler had been faster." Elias didn't let her finish. But he wasn't. He placed a hand on Brutus's massive shoulder, feeling the warmth beneath the cold metal. Brutus fought back. Brutus let out a low, deep rumble, not a growl of anger, but a sound of understanding. For the first time in his life, he had won his own battle. But Dmitri wasn't celebrating. He paced back and forth, his rifle slung over his shoulder, his face tense. "This isn't over, Captain. The Tarkili don't just send patrols for no reason." He turned, eyes sharp. "They know Brutus is alive." Elias felt a chill in his spine. Dmitri was right. The Tarkili never abandoned their weapons. If they knew Brutus had survived, they would come back. And next time, they wouldn't send just a small patrol. They would bring a war fleet. A difficult choice. The team gathered in the outpost's war room, a dimly lit chamber with a flickering holographic map of their surroundings. Elias looked at his crew, Lena, Dmitri, Marla, and Brutus, who crouched near the door, watching them with quiet intelligence. "We have two options," Elias said. "We either prepare for an attack, or we run," Marla finished. A heavy silence filled the room. "We don't even know how much time we have," Lena said. "The Tarkili might already be sending reinforcements." Dmitri slammed his fist on the table. "We can't fight an entire fleet, Captain. We don't have enough firepower, even with Brutus on our side." Brutus let out a low growl at the mention of his name, his ears twitching as if he understood. Elias sighed. Dmitri was right. The outpost was small and lightly armed. They had men, aged to fight off a small patrol, but if the Tarkili sent warships, they would be wiped out. "We need a way out," Elias said. "A plan." Lena bit her lip, deep in thought. Then her eyes widened. "Wait. What if we don't run? What if we make them think Brutus is already dead?" Elias frowned. "Explain." Lena pulled up the outpost's communications panel. "The Tarkili are tracking Brutus through his implants, right? If I can send out a fake distress signal, we can make it look like Brutus was destroyed in the battle." Marla's eyes lit up. "That could work. If the Tarkili think their weapon is gone, they might not waste resources searching for him." Dmitri still looked skeptical. "And what if they don't believe it?" Elias met his gaze. "Then we'll be ready." Setting the trap. For the next few hours, the team worked quickly. Lena modified the Tarkili override signal, making it send out false readings, as if Brutus's biological systems had shut down. Dmitri and Marla set up explosives near the battlefield outside, creating a scene of destruction. They even dragged the bodies of the fallen Tarkili soldiers to make it look like a deadly last stand had happened. Brutus watched it all silently, his 3 glowing eyes blinking slowly. When the preparations were done, Elias stepped up to him. "This is for your safety," he told the beast. "We can't let them take you back." Brutus didn't growl or move. Instead, he slowly lowered his head, pressing his forehead against Elias's chest for a brief moment. Lena gasped softly. Even Dmitri was speechless. It was the first true sign of trust. Elias smiled and patted Brutus's head. "Let's finish this." The message is sent. Lena activated the fake distress beacon. A garbled emergency signal was sent out, its contents carefully crafted to make the Tarkili believe that Brutus had been destroyed along with the outpost. Seconds later, an incoming transmission flashed on their screen. The team froze. Dmitri whispered, "They took the bait." Elias leaned forward as the Tarkili commander's face appeared on the screen. The alien's reptilian features twisted into a snarl. His yellow eyes burned with anger. "We have received your distress call, human," the commander said. "It seems you have cost us an important asset." Elias forced himself to remain calm. "Your war beast is dead," he said flatly. "You abandoned it, and now it's gone." The commander's red-marked armor plates shifted as he leaned forward. "This is not over." The transmission cut off. Silence. Lena exhaled. Did it work? Dmitri stared at the dark screen. "We'll find out soon enough." Elias turned to Brutus. The war beast stood tall, his massive form glowing faintly in the dim light. For now, they had bought time. But deep in his gut, Elias knew the Karkili would return. And next time, they wouldn't just be looking for Brutus. They would come to destroy them all. To be continued. Next. Part 6. The Final Stand. Days passed, but the silence in the outpost was unsettling. The fake distress signal had been sent, and for the moment, the Karkili seemed to have bought the story. Yet Elias couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. He watched the horizon every day, waiting for the inevitable strike that would come. Elias sat at a table, staring at a map of the surrounding area. The holographic projections flickered in front of him, showing the location of the outpost and the nearby mountains. "We've bought some time," Lena said, her voice soft but determined. She had been working nonstop to ensure Brutus's implants remained hidden from any more detection. But time for what? Dimitri's voice was grim. The Karkili are relentless. If they think they can take Brutus back, they'll come for him. They'll come for all of us. Elias turned to look at him. "I know, but we need to be smart. We can't outrun them. We can't fight them head on. We need a plan, a real one." Marla stood at the window, looking out toward the empty desert beyond the outpost. "If we could get to the mountains," she suggested, her finger tracing a path on the map, "maybe we could use the terrain to our advantage. Take the high ground. Set traps." Elias nodded slowly. "It's a risk, but it might be our only chance." Brutus, who had been resting in the corner of the room, lifted his head, his 3 glowing eyes fixed on Elias. Despite the quiet, the war beast was always aware, always listening. The bond between them had only grown since the battle with the Karkili patrol. Brutus now moved with more confidence, and while he still remained cautious around the humans, there was no question that he had chosen them. He was no longer the weapon of his past, but a creature capable of making his own choices. And now they needed to make a choice together. The enemy returns. Elias stepped into the control room, where Marla and Dimitri were already monitoring the sensors. Lena joined them soon after. Dimitri looked up at Elias, his expression hard. "Captain, they're coming." The room fell into silence. Elias felt the air grow heavy. He knew it was only a matter of time, but now that the moment was here, he couldn't ignore the feeling that they were facing their final battle. "How many?" Elias asked, his voice calm but sharp. Marla adjusted the controls, zooming in on the incoming ships. A full fleet. They got at least 3 warships and several dropships. They're coming in fast. "How much time?" "Less than 30 minutes, Dmitri replied. "We have to move now if we want to get to the mountains before they land." Elias clenched his fists. This was it. There would be no turning back now. "We'll move out immediately," he said. "Lena, make sure Brutus is ready. Marla, Dmitri, start getting the explosives and traps ready. I'll start preparing the escape route. We'll set up defensive positions at the mountain pass and hold them off as long as we can." Everyone nodded, already moving into action. They had no time to waste. The final countdown. The team worked swiftly, packing supplies and securing their weapons. Lena spent a few minutes making sure Brutus's cybernetic implants were functioning properly. Despite the danger, she felt a deep sense of responsibility for the war beast. He wasn't just their ally, he was their hope. Brutus stood still as Lena worked, his 3 glowing eyes locked onto her. The bond between them had grown in ways that neither could fully explain. They were partners in this fight. "Ready," Lena said, standing up. She ran her hand over Brutus's armor, her voice soft but firm. "Let's do this." Outside, the sky grew darker as the Karkili fleet approached. The distant rumble of their engines could be heard even through the thick walls of the outpost. Elias stepped outside, his boots crunching against the sand as he surveyed the land. They had to make it to the mountains. That was their best shot at survival. Elias turned back to the outpost, where the team was gathered, weapons in hand. Brutus walked beside them, his massive form casting a long shadow in the evening light. Elias could see the resolve in his eyes. He was ready to fight. The plan was simple: get to the mountains, set up traps, and hold off the Tarkili long enough for everyone to escape. The odds weren't great, but they had no choice. "We move now," Elias said. "Stay close. Keep your heads down." The group moved as one, staying low and keeping to the shadows. The mountains loomed in the distance, their peaks just visible against the darkening sky. The battle begins. It didn't take long for the Tarkili to find them. The distant sound of gunfire and the roar of Brutus filled the air as the enemy ships touched down. The Tarkili soldiers poured out of the dropships, their weapons raised, their eyes scanning the horizon. Elias signaled for his team to fall into position behind the rocks. The traps were set, explosives buried in the ground, camouflage netting to hide their movements, and hidden turrets aimed at the approaching enemy. The first wave of Tarkili soldiers moved forward, unaware of the danger. As they crossed into the kill zone, Elias signaled. The ground shook as explosives went off, sending enemy soldiers flying into the air. The Tarkili were momentarily disoriented, but they quickly regrouped. Elias and his team opened fire, their weapons cutting through the air. Brutus roared, charging into the fray, his massive claws striking down any Tarkili unlucky enough to cross his path. The war beast was a force of nature, moving with deadly precision and power. Despite their best efforts, the Tarkili kept coming, determined to capture their prize. But Elias's team wasn't about to give up. They'd fought with everything they had, using their knowledge of the terrain, their weapons, and their intelligence to outmaneuver the enemy. For every Tarkili that fell, another took its place. The odds were against them, but they fought on. A turning point. The battle raged on for hours. The Tarkili were relentless, but so were the humans and their war beast. Elias could see the strain on his team. Marla was starting to tire, Dimitri's movements were slower, and Lena was still trying to keep Brutus in fighting shape. Then, out of the corner of his eye, Elias saw something that made his heart skip a beat. A Tarkili warship hovered above the battlefield, its weapons charged and aimed directly at them. If it fired, they would be wiped out in seconds. "Fall back," Elias shouted. "We need cover, now." But before they could move, a massive blast rang out from the mountainside. Brutus had taken the fight to the Tarkili warship. With a roar, the war beast leaped high into the air, his claws outstretched. His cybernetic implants hummed with energy as he collided with the warship's hull, tearing through its armor. "Brutus!" Lena screamed. But the war beast was unstoppable. With one final roar, he struck the ship's core, and the explosion lit up the sky. The battle was far from over, but Brutus had given them a chance. The world felt like it was holding its breath. Smoke billowed from the wreckage of the Tarkili warship, filling the air with thick black clouds. The sound of battle still echoed through the mountains, but there was a brief, almost peaceful pause. For a moment, the fight seemed to have stopped, and all that could be heard was the wind and the distant hum of the remaining enemy ships. Elias's heart pounded in his chest as he looked toward the wreckage. His mind was racing. Brutus had just made a huge sacrifice. But was he still alive? "Brutus!" Lena shouted, her voice filled with worry. Mitri, who had been taking cover behind a large rock, stood up cautiously. "That explosion. He's either gone, or he's still in there fighting." Elias clenched his fists. There was no way they could afford to lose him now. Not after everything they had gone through. Brutus had fought with them, and now they had to fight for him. "Move out," Elias commanded, his voice strong. "We need to reach that wreckage now. He might still need us." Lena, her face pale but determined, nodded. "Right behind you." The search for Brutus. The team moved swiftly, dodging the remaining fire from the Tarkili soldiers who had regrouped. The area was chaos, bodies and wreckage scattered across the rugged terrain. But Elias couldn't afford to lose focus. Brutus had given them a chance, and now they had to return the favor. They made their way toward the wreckage of the warship. The ground was uneven, and every step seemed to bring them closer to an answer, though Elias couldn't shake the fear that gnawed at him. If Brutus was alive, he might be pinned under the wreckage. If he wasn't, over there, Lena called, pointing to the side of the ship. Elias's eyes narrowed, and his pulse quickened. In the shadow of the warship's twisted metal, something moved. Brutus. The massive war beast emerged, his glowing eyes dim but still full of life. He was battered, his once polished metal armor scorched and dented, but he was alive. Lena rushed to his side, a mix of relief and awe flooding her. "Brutus, you're alive." Brutus looked down at her, his 3 glowing eyes softening as he knelt beside her. With his massive paw, he gently nudged her, a low rumble of affection escaping his throat. Elias couldn't help but smile. He had never thought he'd see the day when a war beast would show such tenderness, but here it was. Brutus had become more than a weapon. He was part of their team. "We need to get out of here," Dmitri said, looking up at the sky. "The Tarkili won't be far behind." Elias nodded. "Agreed. Let's move before more of them arrive." A final push. As they moved away from the wreckage, the team began to regroup. Marla, who had been covering the rear, joined them. Her face was streaked with dirt and sweat, but there was a determined look in her eyes. "We've got more Tarkili coming in from the north," she reported. "They've probably seen the smoke from the explosion. We don't have much time." Elias felt the weight of the situation settling in. They were running out of options. The mountains offered some cover, but the Tarkili were relentless. It wouldn't be long before they were surrounded. "Brutus," Elias said, turning to the war beast, "you've given us a chance. Now we need you to help us one more time. Lead them away from us. Give us the time we need to make it to the next pass." Brutus tilted his head, as if understanding exactly what was being asked of him. Then, without a moment's hesitation, he roared into the sky, a sound that made the earth tremble. The Tarkili soldiers would hear that roar, and they would know what it meant. "We'll cover you," Dmitri said, loading his weapon. "Make sure they focus on you, not us." The distraction. With Brutus leading the charge, the team took their position behind a rocky outcrop, hidden from the enemy's view. They watched as Brutus charged toward the approaching Tarkili soldiers, his massive form moving like a shadow in the distance. The Tarkili didn't hesitate. They opened fire, their weapons blazing as they tried to take down the beast. But Brutus was too fast, too strong. He moved with a purpose, dodging blasts, and using his size and strength to strike fear into the enemy. His powerful claws raked across the ground, sending shockwaves through the earth, knocking Tarkili soldiers off their feet. For a moment, the enemy was disoriented, unsure of what they were facing. The team used this opportunity. Lena, Dmitri, and Marla opened fire from their positions, picking off the stragglers and sabotaging their weapons. Elias had never seen such teamwork before. Every shot was precise, every movement calculated. They were fighting for each other now, and nothing else mattered. But even as they pressed forward, Elias couldn't shake the fear that Brutus might not make it. The Tarkili were relentless. They would stop at nothing to capture or kill them. A change in tactics. Just as Elias was about to signal for the team to move out, a new threat appeared. A massive Tarkili war machine appeared from behind the mountains, its massive guns aimed directly at them. The machine fired once, and the ground shook beneath their feet. "They're bringing in the big guns," Dmitri shouted. "We can't fight that." "We don't have to," Elias said. "Brutus does." The war beast turned, hearing the sound of the approaching machine. His eyes flared with a fierce, determined light. With a final roar, he charged toward the war machine, using the chaos to his advantage. Elias watched as Brutus leaped onto the war machine, his claws digging into its armor. The machine fired several shots, but Brutus was too agile. Dodging and weaving as he tore into the massive machine's joints and engines. The Carchili were helpless. They could see their war machine was going down, and their soldiers began to retreat in fear. With one final strike, Brutus tore through the war machine's core. A massive explosion rang out, sending debris flying in every direction. The Carchili soldiers scattered, and for the first time in what felt like hours, the battlefield fell silent. The calm after the storm. Elias stood up, his body sore from the fight, but there was a sense of victory in the air. The Carchili had been pushed back, and they had managed to survive. The war was not over, but today they had won. Is it over? Lena asked, breathless. For now, Elias replied, his gaze turning toward the horizon. But we've earned a moment to breathe. Brutus approached them, his body battered but still standing tall. Elias walked over to him, placing a hand on the war beast's massive head. You did it, Elias said softly. We did it. Brutus let out a low rumble of satisfaction, his glowing eyes softening as he nuzzled Elias. The bond between them was stronger than ever. We'll be ready for whatever comes next, Elias said, his voice filled with determination. Together. The team stood in silence, watching the setting sun. The battle was over, but the war was far from finished. Yet for the first time in a long time, they felt hope. The Carchili had underestimated them, and that would be their mistake. And they would be ready when the next battle came.